Brandon Stark, Ned's brother, did something so incredible, so amazing, that he makes Barristan climbing a city wall at night to rescue the captured Targaryen king, Aerys II, or the Mad King, a total joke.
If you like this video, please consider donating to Patreon so I can work closer to summoning the Great One. Thanks. Link in the video description down below. Now to your video about Brandon Stark being the absolute MVP of the North.
Brandon Stark was a total bamf. Come on, I mean the guy had to be restrained from beating Rhaegar Targaryen's ass twice. Yeah, twice. But that isn't the most badass moment. No. Not even close. But I want to rewind just in case you aren't familiar with Ned's deceased brother. Well, I mean, Ned is deceased too, but deceased brother while Ned was alive. Brandon Stark was the firstborn child to Lord Rickard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, and Lyanna Stark in 262 AC. He had 3 other siblings, Ned Stark born a year later, Lyanna Stark born around 266 AC, and Benjen Stark born after 266 AC. Brandon was a wild wolf, loved his sword, with him being quoted as saying, "A bloody sword is a beautiful thing." And also this gem, "I want it sharp enough to shave the hair from a woman's cunt." Which kind of makes me think like Brandon may have had a preference for the female bush. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. That's not the badass thing. Although he would be ahead of his time on that fashion. Because of Brandon's love of swords, and also his own penis, of all his siblings, George R. Martin has stated that Brandon was the best with a sword, which includes Lyanna, but I guess her sword was a lot smaller and less functional. But you know, a really, really good way of describing Brandon Stark, which I have used before, is pointing out how vastly different he is from his brother Ned. While Brandon was hot-blooded, Ned had cold water in his veins. When Ned spoke, it was always with a basic level of courtesy that had a coolness underneath, while Brandon's amusement and laughter was as wild as his rages. Guy was a bit intense. And when Catelyn first met Ned, she remembers she had been expecting a younger version of his brother Brandon, but Ned was shorter, plainer in the face, and very somber. I know, it doesn't sound like a book or show Ned at all, does it? At a young age, Brandon was sent to be fostered at Barrowton with Lord Dustin, but given how much he loved to ride, he would often be seen riding the rills. Despite taking the virginity of Barbray Ryswell while being fostered, and then them becoming lovers, Brandon's father would instead arrange for him to marry Catelyn Tully, some say because of some Southron ambitions. It's been so many years, I don't even know if I have a whole video on that theory anymore. I probably do. Catelyn was around 12 and Brandon was 14 or 15 when they were betrothed, and Lady Barbray, Brandon's lover, was absolutely devastated. On their last night together, Brandon would swear to Lady Barbray he never wanted Catelyn Tully. It was all very sad. Lady Dustin is still super bitter about it in the books. Alright, so that is the lead up. Catelyn Tully, Brandon Stark are betrothed. Their wedding wasn't actually planned until 282 AC when Brandon was age 20. Then they finally had a wedding date announced. Unfortunately, not everyone was super happy about this arrangement. One person in particular, Peter Baelish, aka Littlefinger. And honestly, here's where the fun begins. You see, Peter Baelish was in love with Catelyn Tully, like crazy in love, but Catelyn viewed him as only a brother. Peter, like most people friend-zoned, refused to accept it, and instead stuck around to remain just being a raging asshole. So this fucking idiot decided, hey, I'm pissed Catelyn's engaged, I'm in love with her, they now have a wedding date, I'm going to challenge Brandon Stark for his right to Catelyn's hand. And as you can imagine, this was bad for a few reasons. One, Littlefinger was 15 and Brandon was 20. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the size difference between a 15 and 20-year-old. I mean an actual 15 and 20-year-old, not the bullshit ancients Hollywood tries to pass off for those ages. Size difference, mass difference, it's gonna be a little intense. 2. Brandon was amazing with the sword. Remember when I brought that up earlier in this video? Yeah, Rawrist has a plan. I actually think before I talk. Sometimes. A few times. Fuck you. 3. And I would say most important, if it wasn't based on a medieval society, Catelyn didn't want Peter at all. Peter begged for her favor so he could wear it during the duel, but Cat was like, nah, I'm going to give my pale blue scarf, embroidered with the leaping trout of River Run, to Brandon. You could tell things really weren't going well when Edmure Tully, Catelyn's younger brother, served as Brandon's squire during the duel. So the two men end up meeting in the lower bailey of River Run. Peter wore only a helm, breastplate, and mail, so Brandon took off most his armor. Imagine that. Like, okay, well, you only have minimum armor, so I'm just gonna take off most of mine. Fuck it, let's go, I don't give a shit. About to beat up a teenager. Thankfully, when Catelyn had pressed her favor into Brandon's hand, she pleaded with her fiancé. He is only a foolish boy, but I have loved him like a brother. It would grieve me to see him die. Catelyn says that she still remembers the way Brandon looked at her, with the cool gray eyes of a Stark, and he promised to spare the boy. And this is when Brandon Stark did the most epic thing he's ever done. He just beats Littlefinger's motherfucking ass. I mean, Brandon drove Peter all across the bailey and down to the water, raining steel on him every goddamn step, until the boy was staggering and bleeding from a dozen wounds. And during the fight, Brandon was repeatedly yelling at him, "Yield. Yield. My guy, you should yield." But Peter would continue fighting on with a shake of his head because Peter is Peter. When they ended in the river, water up to their ankles, Brandon decided to end it with a brutal backhand cut that went through Peter's rings and leather and into his flesh below his ribs. This cut was so deep and looked so gnarly, Catelyn had feared it was going to be mortal. But because of Catelyn's request, Brandon let Peter off with just a scar. More than he deserved, though, little bitch. Even though Brandon did let him off and was nicer than he needed to be, Ned would say much later that Brandon, when he would speak of Peter, would speak of him with some heat. And what makes this epic moment of Brandon Stark's even better is that Littlefinger never forgot the absolute beating he got from Brandon. He would hold on to it for the rest of his life. So yeah, that is the most epic Brandon Stark moment ever. Maybe if I have time, I can tell you a bedtime story about the 2 times he threatened to beat Rhaegar Targaryen's ass. Anyways, thanks for watching, like, subscribe.